everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today, wherever you are in the world or in the virtual world. I'm Jackie Lineberger, Director of Social Media at TaskUs, and I told our team the only way I would agree to do this event is if I could have that 10-hour YouTube live stream of Fireplace streaming behind me, because this is a fireside chat. It's only fitting. So I encourage all of you to get cozy and stream the virtual fire along with me. Also, this is the first time we're doing an event like this on this platform, so we're super excited to be here. However, as first timers, there may be some room for technical difficulties, so please forgive us if we do find ourselves in that situation. That being said, we do plan to do live streams monthly going forward, so stay tuned for more info on that. Now, on to the fun. We're so excited to talk to you today about this ridiculously awesome thing called the Metaverse. What CB Insights is calling to tech's trillion-dollar opportunity. I'm joined by Joe McNamara from our risk and response team and Siva Ragava from our trust and safety team, who are both extremely educated on this topic and the risk it can present. So you'll hear from them both later and be able to ask them whatever questions you might have on the Metaverse. Please go ahead and drop your questions in the chat box and we'll get them answered. Now, I hope you're here today because you're just as curious and engaged in this whole Metaverse madness as I am. Who are the big companies who are participating and in developing this virtual world? What are the business opportunities it might present? How do we keep users safe and supported as adoption rises? Should your organization even get involved? And what do you need to do in order to do so? The Metaverse is probably the buzziest word on the internet nowadays. This used to seem like some far-off thing in the future, but today tech giants like Microsoft and Meta are already bringing the Metaverse to a whole new level. They're successfully engineering a digital space that not only mimics, but is potentially improving reality. Companies like Qualcomm, Alibaba, ByteDance, they're making big investments into virtual reality, gaming, and into headset companies. So our goal for the next webinar is for every one of you to be wearing your Oculus or your HTC Vive headset. So everyone start saving up to buy one of those for our next one. We see companies like Gucci, they'll have our avatars dressed in their most stylish outfits at the virtual parties. And maybe now we can actually afford the Balenciagas. Yes, those that look like socks. But it doesn't come without challenges and risks being in the Metaverse. The Metaverse opens a whole Pandora's box, and it opens up the possibility for harassment, privacy concerns, and security issues. For example, given the use of avatars, identity verification becomes all the more important. I mean, talk about the ultimate opportunity for catfishing. If you start dating someone just because you like their cute avatar and their cute, nice virtual clothes, oof. So this will especially be a problem for underage users. And as daunting as all of this is, companies that want to compete in this Metaverse space have to get started today and start taking those initial steps. What I've gotten to experience firsthand from clients over the past couple of years is the convergence of verticals, which is ultimately going to lead up to the launch of the Metaverse. Think about it. We have streaming companies like DAZN and Fubo TV hiring heads of gaming and gambling. We have social companies like Snap and TikTok hiring event ticketing leads. Where there's retail, there is social. Where there's social and gaming, there is retail. And major entertainment brands are adding gaming into their offerings like Netflix, Microsoft with acquisition of Activision Blizzard. It's not just the metas of the world that are already in this space. Everyone's already here to play. And all of these hires and strategy shifts are leading up to the launch of the virtual world. So I am here with the absolutely shameless plug that TaskUs is already supporting all of these types of companies and verticals. So we are eager and we are equipped as they get into the Metaverse space. With our expertise in content moderation, risk and fraud response, AI tagging, and customer support, we will help build, support, monetize, and keep your metaverse platform safe. It's so important, and I cannot stress enough, that your partners think in this metaverse-driven mindset. In the next decade, the metaverse is expected to reach 1 billion people, host hundreds of billions of dollars in digital commerce, and support jobs for millions of creators and developers. That's in 10 years. That's by 2032, people. I feel like 2012 was yesterday, so it's coming a lot faster than you probably think. We've seen people asking a bunch of questions about what the metaverse might look like. And something that people have been asking is, do you think the convergence of all of these industries in the metaverse will affect jobs and the types of work that are required in order to build the metaverse? I think we can go ahead and assume that the growth of the metaverse is largely dependent on AI and heavily driven by it. If you think about, how do you think like VR has been able to grow as quickly as it has? Do you think that automatically something can just track your hand as you're hitting the tennis ball using your headset and playing different games? No, we call this human-in-the-loop data labeling. And essentially, those early data sets, they don't just build themselves. Original metadata comes from human taggers tagging every data point on your hand or whatever it is that you are tracking in the metaverse. So we have teams tagging kitchens, hands, podcast, cities for autonomous vehicles, you name it. And this work is hugely complemented by our new platform called the Taskverse, where we get to crowdsource people to do this work. Details and personal touch in a highly digital world are going to be super crucial, and this tagging work in itself will create tons of jobs. Also, as the metaverse adoption grows, companies will be seeking candidates who are comfortable with the concept of Web3. So the sooner that you educate yourselves, the better. Another common question we've been getting about the metaverse is this going to be a whole new social media, or is it just going to be an extension of what already exists today in the social media space? I personally think of it as more of an extension of what we already have, but there's more opportunities for immersion. So studies are saying that 25% of users will spend at least 1 hour a day in the metaverse, and that could be for work, education, social interaction, or entertainment. It'll provide new opportunities for brands and influencers to engage and interact with their audiences. It can be used as a customer support channel. You could have a VR storefront and a salesperson as an avatar. So there's tons of opportunities in this space. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Joe McNamara from our risk and response team. He's going to dive into how we can help overcome challenges in the metaverse. Feel free to go ahead and add in any questions into the chat for Joe and Siva as we go along. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie, and welcome everybody. Again, to echo the sentiments of Jackie earlier on, just thrilled to have you guys here with us. And today I get the opportunity to kind of talk about how the environment is changing from what we're seeing in a Web 2.0 world today to what we're going to see in a Web 3.0. Before I kind of jump into a couple points that I want to make, I think one of the most crucial tools that you can have in your toolbox is going to be common sense. And you'll see what I mean as we start to run through these. But at the end of the day, the metaverse itself is such a new frontier that there's plenty to be done. There's plenty to kind of go out and stake and kind of build and be successful. But at the same time, there's a lot of threats and challenges that come with a new space like this. And so to sum it up, essentially the nefarious actors and kind of the illicit activities that we see in today's world in the Web 2.0 space, those aren't going away. And as we think about the metaverse from an environment perspective, yes, it's brand new, but there's still plenty of folks that are coming over to interact and take advantage of what that new experience is going to be. And so for us at Risk and Response, we've sat down and started to kind of formulate what are going to be the major challenges or just threats that we need to address for our clients as they kind of shift from a 2.0 to a 3.0 presence. And so what we've done is we've pretty much broken it down into three specific areas. The first being digital identity verification, as well as threat detection and human-centered policy and process. And so for digital identity verification, the number one thing that we want to keep in mind is, in order to be, the best vendor or the best platform, in order to best serve your users, you have to do everything in your power to make sure that you understand who they are. And, depending on what industry you're in, I'm going to borrow the phrase KYC, or know your customer, right? Which at its core is exactly what it sounds like. It's, what kind of characteristics or variables can we put together within a profile to better understand our typical users, their actions, as well as build insights around, predictive models that allow us to better mitigate some of the risks that come with those nefarious actors I mentioned earlier. And so, as we think about the metaverse, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, it's all virtual and it's all digital. And so everything is going to be different. And yeah, in some cases it is, right? Like I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago about, an AI developer, and essentially he broke it down from a perspective of what it's actually going to take to build out this metaverse, right? And the subsequent spaces that come with it. And, his rough calculation essentially said, if every person on the planet spent the next 10 years of their lives devoted purely and solely to building out the metaverse, we still would not have enough computing power, brain power, or just a collective of energy to be able to build this out. And so, one of the tools that's going to be on full display as we continue this trend and path into the metaverse is certainly going to be artificial intelligence. But obviously with artificial intelligence comes some challenges and kind of some barriers, right, as well. And from a natural perspective, it makes a lot of sense. So, while the knee-jerk reaction for most folks as they start to think about how do they enter this new environment is going to be, well, let's just throw AI to work. Yes, that's part of it. But at the same time, you do have to take into consideration that there's going to be a human element to this as well. And what I mean by that is, Jackie hit on it earlier, the data pointing and the processing that, our teams are doing today, and there are teams around the world doing this. An AI or an artificial intelligence is only as good as the information it's being fed. And for it to be correct and kind of align with the overall vision, there still needs to be human interaction. On top of that, you also have to take into account that the metaverse itself is going to be extremely human immersive. And so, as we look at, potential threats within this KYC space, we see things like account takeover, elves or evil twins that I'll get to in a second, as well as virtual physical perception manipulation, which I'm only going to say that once because I'll probably stumble over it if I say it again. But essentially what that adds up to is, with this move from 2.0 to 3.0, the entire experience is designed to change, and it's designed to take you on a more immersive journey, far more immersive than any experience that we've had to date, especially with technology augmenting senses like visual, auditory, smell, taste. It's around the corner. Believe me, guys, if you've seen Ready Player One, that technology is most certainly being developed right now or rolled out even as we speak. And so, for that first bucket, that digital identity verification, it's extremely critical for any organization or business that's looking to make this jump to fully vet and understand who their customer base is first, who their end users are going to be, which kind of leads into the next point, which would be just around threat detection. And so, as you're evaluating and looking at your position as an organization in this 2.0 world, what kind of risks are you modeling to better mitigate or kind of insulate your organization from being able to or to withstand in the 2.0 world? And the reason I ask that and why you should be asking this of yourselves is those things aren't going to go away. Like I mentioned, a lot of the same issues or challenges that we see in 2.0 are going to be existent in 3.0, whether or not they're there yet, with an added flair. And that flair is really a big dose of the unknown. As you think about the opportunity that you see with all of these brands and logos jumping in, it seems on a daily basis, it can be really, really enticing and almost lead to a feeling of FOMO, if you will, if your organization isn't there. But I highly stress and would advise against taking that jump too fast, because if you do that, what you'll end up with is kind of a half-baked strategy that gets you, yeah, you'll have a presence in the metaverse, but at the same time, if you don't address these vulnerabilities and find ways to better model and mitigate these risks, you'll end up with huge just pockets of soft infosec security and additional risks that we're not quite privy to at this point, right? Like, in order to be successful here, you really have to be dynamic and you have to be fast on the trigger in terms of your reaction time. And so, with all of that, again, it's less about kind of the new world and more about what are you doing to take steps today to prepare for what that new world is going to mean to your organization. And it really starts with doing an honest and deep self-evaluation of your organization's strengths as well as its weaknesses, and being able to identify where to focus your efforts around fortifying and kind of hardening those vulnerabilities will serve you much further into the future, especially as you're looking at 3.0. So I could go into a lot more detail, but I certainly don't want to drone on. And I know that Siva's got some really great insight in terms of a trust and safety perspective. And so, if you guys have got questions, please throw them in the comments. We'll try and get to those at the end. And if not, we'll be happy to take those offline and kind of address them one-off. So with that, Siva, you're up, man.
Thank you, Joe. And must say, those were some really cool insights. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone dialing into this event from across the globe. My name is Siva, and I lead trust and safety at Taskers. I wanted to keep this interaction live. So, all you folks out there on the chat window, drop in your comments, and I'm happy to answer them. Hashtag metaverse, or rather, hashtag dark matter. How would you vote? As Jackie mentioned, the internet today reaches more than a billion people, creating a million plus jobs. Social interactions are booming and are taking a new virtual shape. Look around, virtually, of course, and there is metaverse element everywhere across you, from digital currency to concerts to NFTs to gaming. And you know what? In India down south, a couple recently merged tradition and technology as they hosted their first wedding reception through metaverse. Interestingly, they even managed to have the bride's late father bless them. How is this all possible? It was made possible by creating a digital avatar. As these positive stories emerge, and I'm sure you have so many more stories out there to narrate, there is definitely a growing concern too, as metaverse adoption is increasing day by day. Today, I'm here to talk about two things from trust and safety perspective about metaverse. One, what are the threats that pose to social avatars in metaverse space, and how do companies and platforms prepare for those threats? One of my main responsibilities at Taskers is to ensure that we craft the most nuanced content policy guidelines for platforms to adapt easily and quickly. Metaverse is all about fantasy, don't you agree? And it opens up a new degrees of online freedom and also opportunities for misconduct and crimes too. Like we see growing threats emerging already, and I'm sure you encountered too. There are some threats that we should definitely keep in mind while we draft good guidelines around the space. And what are those threats? One, hateful content and behavior, and these could be from racism, homophobic slurs, even hateful symbols on avatars. Sexual content and threat, minor safety, illegal trade of virtual goods, and even we have seen threats emerging from impacts on mental health, motion sickness from VR headsets, and even environmental impact from energy consumption, because there is an increased usage of data in the space. There are more out there. So how do we make metaverse the place free from all such abuses? An interesting take here is, how do companies and platforms find ways to incentivize better behaviors and reward positive interactions? Something to think about seriously, right? At Taskers, we have a clear trust and safety vision to keep communities and platforms safe, including our people. We believe creating standards, ground rules for companies to adopt and enforce is very key in metaverse. We need to gear up to a new world in front of us, a cloned society maybe, which is free of threats. With this, I hand it over to Jackie. Thank you, people.
Thank you, Joe and Siva. Thank you guys so much. So we have some questions in the chat for you guys coming in from both LinkedIn and YouTube. So first is, what new trends or unique opportunities will be created in customer support in the metaverse, whether it's technology or humans?
Siva, you want to take that one first?
I think from metaverse perspective, right, the skill set that we all need to adapt, and Joe was already saying that, right, we need to be geared up to understand how's the space looking like, what are the skill sets that are needed to actually identify emerging threats in this space, right? So two things. From a people perspective, I think the skill sets that are needed are way different from traditional content moderation space, and we all need to understand this space a little better, because there is going to be a higher intervention of technology in this space, right? So imagine you are actually monitoring avatars and the abuses and threats that are going around these avatars, right? So it's a balance of mental agility, balance of skill set, and also quicker implementation of policies that's going to be playing a vital role as more and more job opportunities get created in this space.
Yeah, and if I could add on that too, from a different perspective, when I look at kind of the opportunities that exist for customer support, both technology and human based, again, I'll go back to my original point, and that is, we need folks that have common sense, that can be able to really put themselves in the shoes of their end users and better anticipate the threats, better anticipate kind of the outcomes of what interactions in the metaverse are going to do to end users. And my example is, we've gotten relatively good over the last 30 years at spotting things like phishing emails or spam emails. We're no longer replying to the Nigerian prince that's asking us for an absurd amount of money in order to, take it and turn it into more money. But, with a transition from that 2.0 to 3.0, one of the areas that is going to be kind of a new frontier, and quite frankly, much more difficult for end users to deal with, is the level of realness, the level of pure, just graphic, representation, whether it be through an avatar or otherwise. Studies have shown us now that we are almost at the point where humans are incapable of spotting a fake avatar from that of a real one. And that's due to, in part, because of some of the technological advances that have come out. But, to kind of sum it up and answer that question, I think one of the major opportunities for folks to start to investigate and look at as potential career moves into the metaverse are really around, how are we taking care of our end users and ensuring that there's a level of safety and health that comes with that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Another question that we have is, aside from trends and opportunities, what major threats are metaverse specific versus threats currently posed against the Web 2 world? So what's Web 3 threats versus Web 2 threats? Joe, we'll pass it to you first.
Absolutely. And so I was kind of prepared for this one. So for folks in the studio, if we've got that video queued up, I'd love to show that just as an example of a threat, and then I can kind of elaborate on that. Do we have that?
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
So I know that very few of us, if any, on the call are probably ever going to get a chance to meet and interact with Morgan Freeman, but plenty of us will get the opportunity to probably do something similar with family members. Now, imagine if that was your mom on the other end, right? And the reason I showed this video is there is a substantial threat, again, with the available technology out there to essentially, pose fraudulent type activities within the metaverse. You know, imagine if you're interacting with somebody who's that lifelike in the metaverse. They act, they speak, they move like a real person does, but behind it is either a nefarious actor or, quite frankly, a spam or some kind of bot that's essentially trying to convince you to do something. And so, again, from a threat perspective, it's going back to that common sense, right? And it like I mentioned, it's going to be difficult, but at the same time, you have to keep your senses up to be able to perceive, what's real and what's not. And with that 2.0 to 3.0 change, those lines kind of get blurred. And so, a couple things just to be wary of. There's software out there now where essentially with a simple gesture like a handshake or a fist bump or even a wave, can essentially allow a hacker to transmit malicious software onto your headset. And so, like I mentioned earlier, for that immersive experience that most folks are looking for in this transition to the metaverse, you have to wear something like this, right? And it will augment your senses, or quite frankly, just completely change it, bring you into that virtual world. But in order for this to work, there are some sensors on here that have to interact with where you are, your spatial positioning in the real world. And so I don't know if you can see that, but there's a couple of these cameras that essentially sit all around this headset and allow the headset to reorient and augment the reality based around the space that you have for you. Now, imagine if that headset has some malicious software that's been downloaded, without your knowledge, and now all of those cameras that are supposed to be keeping you safe are now being hacked for personal identifiable information. So if you're sitting at your desk, doing work or doing anything else, and let's say you've got some sensitive information with invisible sight, that's something where somebody can come in and steal that, and you're none the wiser. Or, from a physical perspective, there are safety parameters that you have to set each time that you kind of go into this virtual world. And they're based around, the sensors in that headset. If somebody hacked into that, they could essentially change those safety parameters or, quite frankly, throw them out the window. And at that point, it opens up the world of hurt for you. Whether it's as simple as, walking into a wall, as I'm sure we've seen, plenty of users do as they kind of get oriented in this new space, or something as malicious as falling out a window or down a flight of stairs. Those are all real threats that, quite frankly, we haven't had to deal with in a 2.0 world, just based on the fact that we still do the majority of our interaction with a mouse and a keyboard. But a lot of that will change as more and more users come into that metaverse and look for that more immersive experience that really transitions their senses away from just a screen and into what feels like reality.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. One more question for Siva. With endless possibilities and unknown risk, how can companies better prepare and equip themselves against malicious attacks in this new playing field for users? How can they prepare for any kind of wellness needs of users?
I think there are two parts to this question, right? So one, how can companies be better prepared to equip themselves to handle this? My take here is creating standards and ground rules for companies to adopt and enforce those rules correctly is going to be very, very key. Metaverse brings some unique challenges, and we all need to be getting prepared towards it, right? So enforcement is key. Guidelines, understanding the guidelines in this space is going to be really, really important. Coming to wellness, right? This whole space comes to life only when you actually wear those headsets, right? So technology comes with a lot of benefits, such as connecting users across the world with common experiences. These virtual relationships can be supportive, sometimes allow people to feel less alone, and also gain support outside of their communities. Additionally, the future use cases of the metaverse and the application of specialized mental care to people that may normally not have access of funds can really be endless. Things to proceed with caution. according to us, about are the dopamine hit that social media provides, and this can be present and amplified in the metaverse, that due to the further dissociation from reality that breeds technology additionally, right? So in nutshell, the metaverse will also be challenged with data privacy and cybersecurity issues, which obviously needs to be taken care of in the kind of wellness solutions that we build in.
Absolutely. Okay, one last question I'll let both of you answer because I think both of your roles are relevant. What is Taskus currently doing to help our clients transition and mitigate risk to their organizations within the metaverse?
Okay, I made Siva go first last time, so I'll go first and give you the last word. I think, in terms of mitigating risk, the main areas that we're looking at as an organization and what we're doing for our clients consist of kind of three things. The first is really capitalizing on our risk strategies that exist in the 2.0 world today. So, working hand in hand with our partners to ensure that, again, those vulnerabilities are limited, that we're looking at ways to better harden things like InfoSec as well as personal information, and just ensuring that we have the best finger on the pulse that we possibly can for end users and knowing those customers the best that we can to better anticipate needs, but also better anticipate threats or just outlying actions that, based on our information, this user or end user would not be making. The other piece of this is again, we're very adamant about closely tracking the market for actionable insights. So I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say we don't know everything, and anybody that tells you that they do, you should probably turn and walk away. With such an immense new opportunity that's positioned within the metaverse, the number one thing is you can't go it alone. And so being able to understand some of the steps that either competitors or contemporaries have taken in the space and understand kind of what the outcomes of those were can better direct the types of decisions and models that you're going to produce in order to, again, keep your organization safe and insulated from risk. And then the last piece is really just around just solidifying your transition strategy. So like I mentioned, if you jump into this too quickly and you don't have your plan set, what you're going to end up with is one foot in the 2.0 world and the other one in the 3.0 world. You're going to open yourself up to a lot of pain. And so just making sure that you've got a solid strategy well before you're ready to kind of hit that button and kind of make that jump will pay multiple dividends down the road.
Thanks, Joe. So I'll summarize this in three important quick areas, right? So one, and keep it simple as well. Environment. We're keeping a close watch on the environment, the market, as Joe said. What's trending? What's advancing in this space? What are some of the market insights that's coming, from this space? How is the market moving? What's the total $1 billion size opportunity that's emerging in this space, right? And obviously, who are the clients who are emerging in this space? And that's the specific area of investment that we are making at Taskus, and all three of us literally spend a good chunk of our time understanding this ecosystem. That's on the environment. Second, people. Obviously, metaverse will not be successful with true people, and considering our people first culture, we want to ensure that the skills that are actually necessary for metaverse moderation, so-called metaverse moderation, we are keeping ourselves ready and identifying those skills, identifying the pool, identifying the markets, and also identifying if there are any cultural nuances that are actually needed in this space is very critical, right? And we are closely studying this area as well. And third, and but not the least, technology. As Joe said, right, we can't proceed alone in this space, right? So there would be a lot of partnerships. There would be a connected ecosystem that's going to eventually build up in this space, and we totally understand that this is going to be a collaborated effort rather than a single effort, right? And what we are trying to do is look around who are the potential players, look around who are the partners that can help us to detect these threats faster, correctly, and also enable platforms to succeed and thrive in Metaverse, right? So just to summarize, these are the three important areas that we are constantly thinking and strategizing on.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Thanks everyone online that tuned in. That's all we have time for today. If you have any additional questions or want to chat with us, feel free to message us on LinkedIn. And feel free to drop in the chat if you have any ideas for future sessions that you want to hear our team talk about. Thanks so much for your time, and we will see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.